did the Special Olympics in Seattle.
Uh-huh.
Really cool place, and it was great to be able to see, them flourish and shine and pass on that baton.
Yeah, exactly. And they glow, and they like come alive, and it's like that's what it's all about for me. Yeah.
That's right. That's what it's all about, is spreading that love and that light. And you do that all the time, Noe. That's why when I was so excited to have you on the show, because you just have such a positive attitude and such a positive light. I mean, really, and your knowledge about the history of music just totally blows me away. I've never really had the opportunity to talk to you about it, but here we are, and now I do, and everybody else is going to get to hear your amazing stories about
All right.
Hendrix and
Yeah.
Bob Dylan and all that.
I'm into the stream of consciousness,
That's a good place to be.
You get me started on one thing, and I'll go, like my other student Aiden would say, when you go swimming in the river of the blues, you never know where it's going to take you. You can go, and this is like a 14-year-old kid, he's giving me the wisdom. He's like, yes, the river of the blues. It starts out in the Mississippi Delta, and it goes upstream up the Mississippi to Arkansas and to Detroit and to Canada, and then it goes over to England, and then it comes back. So,
now, Noe, I mean, you took a trip down to the Blues Trail, correct?
Yes, I did. Yeah.
Can you share about your experience? Because I had definitely my own experience of traveling with, down some of the areas of the Blues Trails.
Okay, let's compare notes. All right.
Hang on 1 second.
Okay.
Andy, do you hear that? It's all kind of fuzzy.
No, sounds fine on my end.
It's fine on your end, Noe. Is it fine on your end?
Perfectly fine.
Okay, so then I'll just keep talking and ignore that, and I'll edit this particular part out. So,
okay.
Rewind, fast forward. So tell me about your experience on the Blues Trail.
What's Andy saying? What do you got?
What part is coming in fuzzy?
Who's fuzzy? Me?
No, I asked you, what are you hearing that's fuzzy?
I can't hear you.
You said that you were here. You said you were hearing something that's fuzzy.
Yeah, I hear a fuzz throughout. You're fuzzy now. Before Noe was fuzzy. Maybe it's just everybody who's talking is fuzzy.
Because because what I'm hearing from the two of you sounds fine.
Yeah, me too.
Okay, let's keep rolling.
Maybe there's some kind of feedback going on. For instance,
maybe
you said before that you wear earbuds. Are you wearing earbuds now?
Yeah, you know what? Don, do you have a set of earbuds? Let's try the earbuds.
Because that's what I'm doing, and I get no feedback. Sometimes when you're
okay, that's fine.
Sitting in front of the computer, and you're hearing it on the speaker, you get a bounce back.
Okay, off goes the hat. Y'all are gonna get some hat hair. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Oh, she got the professional one.
Woo! We're rocking now. Hello.
There you
go. Gold record.
Ah.
Okay. Wow. Okay, so let's hear about your experience on the Blues Trail.
Okay. So, as you know, and maybe everybody else doesn't know, but they will know in a minute, I was the editor of Guitarworld magazine. I started that magazine, and in a big old warehouse in Manhattan, New York City. And when we started, I got together with this amazing photographer dude named John Peden, P-E-D-E-N. And John, he has a blog. He has all kinds of stuff going on in there. He knew everybody and everybody in the guitar world. Now, when I say the guitar world, his particular corner of the guitar world was the instrument itself. He's in his studio in Manhattan. He photographed. We used to have in Guitar World a centerfold, like Playboy.
Wow.
Like Playboy had a centerfold.
That's hilarious.
Instead of a naked lady, you had a naked guitar, right?
And you know, there's lots of people I'm sure out there listening right now that can totally relate to that.
I'm sure they do.
That's a relatable moment with guitarists.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And just as, to extend the metaphor further, just as connoisseurs of the Playboy centerfold will go into detail about every little nook and cranny of the female form, the fans of the guitar centerfold would be obsessing about every detail about a particular guitar, and almost to the point of obsession. And this still carries on today. If you know anybody who's a guitar collector or who's involved with the instrument itself, you begin to notice that they obsess over things like, okay, so yesterday was Les Paul's birthday. So the Les Paul guitar.
Yeah.
There are many different models of it. And there's a gold top. There's a sunburst, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Jimmy Page played a triple pickup Les Paul, a black one. Anyway, so the guitar aficionados, they obsess about things like, okay, that's a 1958 gold top, but you know what? The Phillips screw is not right. In the third pickup, it's not the right screw. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You know? So it's like that. So John Peden and we would do these Guitar World centerfolds every month, and I would write the copy that goes with it, and it involves the appreciation of the particular guitar that we were featuring, and a little backstory and whatnot. And after we did this for a while, we decided to go on. We got our publisher to pay the bill on the first of, I think, 3 of what we called Guitar Safari. Okay, where Peden and I went to some far off place, and we were in search on the trail of the rare guitars. And,
what a great promo!
Right?
What a great promo concept! That's brilliant.
Yeah,
that is brilliant.
Guitar Safari. You know, it was like a safari, but with guitars.
Yeah.
So the first one that we did took us. We got on a plane and we flew into Memphis. Okay, so we went to Memphis, and first part of our trip was we went to the Elvis home there and museum.
I just recently went there, not this year, but the previous year. My years are all confused ever since the pandemic. But anyways, yeah.
And we went to Beale Street and that whole scene. Followed the roots of the blues in that town. And let's see, we stayed. Oh no, that was another trip. I'm sorry.
You went to all my stomping grounds.
Yeah, right. I stayed at another trip when I went down there for the Hendrix Foundation. I went to Memphis and I stayed at the Peabody. Okay?
I stayed there also. I loved it.
Right, with the ducks.
Yeah, with the ducks, everything. It's just so glorious. Yeah, it's beautiful.
Yeah, on that trip, I was there to go and visit with Albert King. And,
okay.
So I went to a recording studio there in Memphis. I
Yeah.
saw Albert, and we did a whole bunch of stuff. And I met Joe Walsh there. Joe Walsh
Okay.
is there, comes out, gives me a big bear hug, you know. Hey,
Yeah.
what do you say?
Wow.
Blah, blah, blah.
Wow. Yeah, I
So,
just recently played with his son too, not Joe, but Albert's son.
oh, really
Yeah.
interesting.
In Memphis. Go ahead. I don't mean to interrupt you, but
No, you're not interrupting. I love the interview. I told you, I'm peripatetic. I go from one thing to another. You asked me about the.
Hey,
You
no,
asked-
this is just like you and I just hanging out, having coffee, and talking about what we love.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we went. So that was Memphis. We did a bunch of stuff there, but then we went to we rented a car. It was as I remember correctly, it was a Ford, like a little car, Ford Escort, and so we called it the Ford Esquire because an Esquire is a model of Fender Telecaster. The Fender Telecaster was the first Fender Telecaster.
Yeah.
And Roy Buchanan, who Pete and I interviewed in his studio, was a master of the Telecaster. But then there was a Broadcaster and an Esquire. The Esquire is the Fender Telecaster that's associated with Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck had an Esquire.
Yeah.
Okay?
My dad had an Esquire, so I'm familiar with that. I used to play it when I was growing up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we called our chariot the Esquire, and we drove along the interstate to Jackson, Mississippi. It's in the middle of the state. Okay.
Yeah.
And we were there on our guitar safari to visit the factory of PV amplifiers, okay, and guitars, mostly amplifiers. So we stayed there. We hung around, but the trip going through Mississippi was like astounding. You know, we're going through all these little towns. I got a picture of me and Peden in front of the Highway 61 highway sign there. You know,
I saw that on your Facebook.
Right?
I saw that picture. Yeah, that's a great shot. If you all don't follow Noë, you should follow him on social media. Do all the socials with him on Facebook and all. Yeah, because you know he's part of history, Guitar World magazine.
Thank you. Oh yeah, and that reminds me the other before we went to Jackson, before we went to the PV place. Our first stop was with Billy Gibbons of ZZ Top to Clarksville. That's why the Highway 61.
Clarksville or Clarksdale?
Clarksdale, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay.
Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Yeah, I played at
Robert Johnson.
I played at the Hambone down there. And that's also where Kingfish is from, and that's right by the Delta Museum. If you all haven't been there, you should drop by and say hey.
There
and Ground Zero. They have Ground Zero.
Well, the Delta Museum, I think it was called, what we were there for was the grand opening that Billy Gibbons was the host of the Blues Hall of Fame.
That is so cool.
Yeah. So we were there. Yeah. We covered it and we hung out. And that's what we always do. We hang out at everything. You know, you've hung out with me. And so we were jamming with Billy Gibbons, and we went all up and down that area. We went up to Arkansas, West Helena. Arkansas is where Sonny Boy Williamson came from. And
wow.
Sonny Boy had the King Biscuit Flower Hour radio show. That's where he got started.
And now they have the King Biscuit Festival.
I'm sure there is a connection there.
Somewhere. Sure, I was thinking about that.
Yeah, right. And in fact, that is, when I teach my harmonica teens, we do a couple of songs, and I go, okay, this is a Robert Johnson song. We're going to do this and this, yada yada, and then I give them some historical background about the culture behind it and about the song and how the blues traveled
Wow.
from the Mississippi and that whole thing that I told you, going up to Detroit and Chicago and over to England. Now, over to England is very important in the history of American blues because over in England, the people like Clapton, Jimmy Page, Van Morrison, all those guys,
Rock
they
and
were
roll.
the rock and rollers, but the so-called British invasion, they are the ones that created a hybrid of the blues, and then they did what they had to do with it, and then they came back, they brought it back over, and so now it became rock and roll, but it's a direct line from Robert Johnson to Muddy Waters to over in England, and Sonny Boy Williamson is part of that trajectory as well, because Sonny Boy got established in England actually when he was there, and Jimmy Page was in his backup band, believe it or not.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Well, Jimmy Page got started. All those guys got started the same way. Jimmy Page was a session musician in London. You know, he played on everybody's record, but as a session musician, not like as a lead guy. And I have over here, back here somewhere in my record pile over here, I have a record that's Sonny Boy Williamson and the Yardbirds, because it was Sonny Boy was the headliner, and the Yardbirds at that time, the Yardbirds was Jimmy Page, Jeff Beck. Clapton had not joined them yet, but those three, and they backed up. They were the backup band for Sonny Boy Williamson. So
wow,
believe that. So
imagine.
Right?
Yeah, well, you know, that's the beginnings of the beginnings. When I was probably about 19. I was sneaking into blues clubs in LA. Oh, don't tell my mom. And I was playing with Tim Bogart from
Bogart,
Cactus, Bogart, Jeff Beck.
Right.
Yeah, and that was my beginnings of blues. You know, and everybody has their big beginnings. The Yardbird, everybody. You know, I learned from some old school people, and who not to learn from than the people, you know,
exactly,
the originators. So lucky for them.
Exactly. And the weird thing is, and the great thing is that these British guys, they had a reverence for these old timers. You know, they worshiped them. Right?
Definitely. There's if I don't know if you've seen this, but there's a video of the Rolling Stones going into a club, and a small little club. I don't know if it was in Chicago. Yeah, you know what
with
video
Muddy?
I'm talking about? Yeah, with Muddy.
I was leading up to that.
Oh man, great minds think alike. Yeah.
In fact, I played that same video for my kids just last week. You know, we love that. You know,
that's a historical video right there.
Yeah, totally. And you could see in there that, I mean, by that time, the Stones were already up there in terms of being superstars and everything. But you could see the humility and the reverence that they had for Muddy.
You could absolutely, because when you said reverence, my mind immediately went to that clip where they're walking into the club and playing with Muddy. Yep. Absolutely. And that's what I love so much about the blues. I had the opportunity to travel to Chicago. And when I went, they took me down to the south side of Chicago, and I played at this little tiny club called the Odyssey. And it was beautiful. I mean, it was so old school down home, and people were dressed up in their suits and their hats. And when I walked in, everybody was greeting me, and they walked me up to this little tiny table in the front, and it had my name on the front of it. And I felt so honored, you know, because there's a lot of huge respect between the musicians. And so they had my name, and they sat me up in the front. And then they called me up and asked me if I would like to sing. And so I did. I sat in and I sang Gladys Knight's tune, "You Really Got to Use My Imagination," which is one of my favorite songs. It's just one of my favorite tunes. And oh
Yeah.
my gosh, Sir Walter Scott was on guitar that night. And he plays, oh shoot. It's losing my mind right now. But anyways, he's huge in the blues scene. And so it was such an honor to be there. So at the end of the song, I sing and I'm looking up at the ceiling, hands raised and giving praise to the Almighty, because got to do that. You got to take time to really thank the Lord for what the gift that He's given you. And up above my head was these letters, KOKO. And I was in Coco Taylor's old club and I didn't even know it. But that's reverence.
Yep.
That's reverence.
Exactly. And it's also give back. I mean, the Stones, when they first went to, before that visit, which was a few years later, when they first came over to the States, first time when they were playing on these, Dean Martin shows and all these TV shows and whatnot, where they were getting dissed and everything. They actually were. I mean, I remember Dean Martin going, "Oh, here's the Rolling Stones,"
But I mean, in music, there's always been sort of like the innovators,
right?
Because the creative mind, it can be really out there, and some people don't understand that creative mind, but they're the innovators of new music.
That's it. The precursor. So. But when they first came over, their first stop was to go over to Chicago to visit Chess Records. Okay.
Yeah.
So Chess Records, where Sonny Boy, Muddy Waters, even John Lee Hooker, all those guys first recorded at Chess Records. So they go into the studio, into the offices of Chess Records, and they see Muddy in the hallway. He got overalls on, and there's a ladder, and he's painting the walls, right? So that was like, a picture that's always in my mind. Here's the rock stars, Rolling Stones. They come to pay homage to Muddy, and he's in there painting the walls like a janitor almost, and that's a weird like microcosm of the sort of the owners, the managers, and whatnot.
Sure. So I totally feel what you're saying and understand it, because I'm living that. And so does that still exist today? That same kind of juxtaposition here, these amazing artists are making, it's feast or famine. One day, you're the star. The next day, you're cleaning somebody's house.
Yeah.
So I really wish where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
We have, I mean, there's basketball players, football stars. I mean, in the way that music is a healer, music touches people. Music can, you can go from sad to happy in seconds. It's a game changer. And yet it's feast or famine. It's very difficult to make that iTunes 99 cents for the single.
Exactly. Well, just think about our friend James Harmon, who just passed.
Yeah.
Right? He passed like 2 weeks ago. I played a thing that Casey actually recorded of James.
Casey Reagan from Music You Can See.
Music You Can See. It's a video. You might want to play this a little bit later. It's pretty amazing. But anyway, I'm thinking about, speaking about Facebook, for the last year or so, James was pretty down. He was down and out almost. You know, he was like selling everything that he had to like make do. He had like these little, it wasn't exactly crowdfunding things because I don't even think he had a bank account, but he would sell like memorabilia, you know, vinyl, anything that he had laying around in the house just to get by. And this guy is like, he's a monster, you know, in terms of the blues and music. And it's so sad. It was so sad, you know.
So I also wanted to, I totally feel you. I also wanted to kind of talk to you about, excuse me. Oh, I have a little tickle in my throat. I wanted to talk to you about your Hendrix book. Will you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I was just
I'm excited about that.
Just coming to that.
Oh, sorry.
So the first chapter is about Jimi Hendrix becomes Jimmy becomes Hendrix in the Village, and that's where I first met Jimmy. When I started out, the way I started out in music actually was a weird thing because it was a result of my playing hooky from high school. I went to a Jewish parochial school, which is like a Catholic parochial school, but it's Jewish, and they call them yeshiva. So I went to a yeshiva, and my family was Orthodox Jewish Holocaust survivors. So my father, my mother were in the concentration camps, and they both survived and came over to this country, having survived that shock. And so, but the culture that we were in was a very insular culture. If you ever seen like pictures of Hasidim, you know, these rabbis with the black coats and the side curls and the beards and everything, that was my family, you know.
Wow.
Yeah, they were my grandfathers and all those. They were rabbis going back many years. And so I went to this yeshiva on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, called Rabbi Jacob Joseph School. So within that conservative sort of society, we had a clique of kids. It was an old boys school. I had a clique of kids who we called ourselves the Bums and Gangsters because one of the rabbis used to yell that at us. You know, there you bums and gangsters. You are a maneuver dick of Bahama, which means a miserable animal.
That's funny.
So we took the nickname and we put that nickname on a pedestal, and we proudly became the Bums and Gangsters. And so we played hooky by going on the subway, 3 subway stops up from the East Broadway station where my school was to the West 4th Street station. The West 4th Street station was the hub of Greenwich Village.
Wow.
So you come out of the subway and you're in Greenwich Village. You got, at that time, it was not hippies yet. It was beatniks. You had beatniks walking around, people with sandals, and they get this guy named Tuli Kuferberg, and he had a group called the Fugs, and there was, let's see, and we went to a poetry reading.
Here I can feel it coming.
All right. Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. This is what opened my mind. Poetry reading actually it was at NYU, because NYU was there, New York University. That's where that was based. And Washington Square Park, which was the center of NYU, that was a place where the folk music movement developed. they had these hootenannies, they had these sing-outs in Washington Square Park. They were world famous. Yeah, everybody was about banjos and jug bands, and fiddles. It's like more country music, but also blues.
Sure.
Mixed up. Bob Dylan was in that crowd, and people that he came up with. So we went to this poetry reading. It was the poet was Lawrence Ferlinghetti. Okay, Lawrence Ferlinghetti, who later became the proprietor in San Francisco of City Lights Books, which was the sort of the epicenter of beatnik poetry.
Okay.
Still exists today. Mm-hmm. And then you had Allen Ginsberg in that crowd. And Allen Ginsberg was there also. I later met Allen Ginsberg and whatnot. So that opened my mind to a whole culture and a whole universe. Jack Kerouac, I don't know if you heard of him. Jack Kerouac, he wrote On the Road. It was a vagabond novel about people riding freight trains and stuff, which I later emulated.
I was going to ask you about that. Did you hop a freight train?
Yeah, I did. Me and my girlfriend, we went, we jumped a freight train because we were actually with another couple up in Canada, and we had a falling out. So we said, okay, goodbye. We started hitchhiking. We started hitchhiking across Canada. And then we got picked up by a Native American son of a chief who said, oh, we have something in common, because he liked hashish, and no, he liked weed, and I had some hashish, so we had a connection.
Bleep, 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 bleep.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then how did you meet Hendrix?
Okay, so going back, yeah, I told you I was.
I'm reeling you in.
Okay, good. I need that. I definitely need that.
Yeah. Reeling you back. No, come back. Let's
say what. Slap my wrist. There you go. So when I got there to Greenwich Village, I also discovered the microcosm of the folk movement called MacDougal Street.
Okay.
MacDougal Street, which was, not only was it at one point the home of Bob Dylan before he moved to Woodstock, which more about that later, but it was also the epicenter of the hootenanny movement. So
I've never heard of the hootenanny movement. I'm going to have to do some homework and Google that, because I've got good Google shui.
You'll be diving down a rabbit hole of music history with that one, because back in the 60s, you had groups like Peter, Paul and Mary. You might have heard of them. Peter, Paul and Mary. Judy Henske, who reminds me of you a little bit. She was a belter. She was a blues belter. Okay. Judy Henske, Judy Collins, this guy named Eric Anderson, who's still out there today. He's an amazing singer-songwriter. It was a singer-songwriter movement. It was folk music, and it was blues. Okay, so this club called the Gaslight Cafe on MacDougal Street was the epicenter of that movement. And every Tuesday night, and by the way, there was a TV show called Hootenanny. So I mean, it was really huge back in those days when popular music, whatever. So at the Gaslight Cafe, they had a Hootenanny night every Tuesday night, which was hosted by a guy named Dave Van Ronk, big husky guy with a beard. And he was friends with Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan came to the Hootenannies. I saw him there many times in the Gaslight. He was like the guru of everybody. But his retinue, everybody else who was there was this guy Jack Elliott, otherwise known as the Brooklyn Cowboy, and Johnny Hammond. Okay, Johnny Hammond Jr., who is the son of John Hammond Sr., who discovered Bessie Smith.
Oh wow!
And Robert Johnson. He did he was responsible for the recordings of Robert Johnson at RCA, and also Bob Dylan. He was the one who brought Bob Dylan to Columbia Records. Okay, so Johnny Hammond was his son, and also in his own right, an amazing blues singer, guitar player, etc. Now, across the street from the Gaslight was a place called Cafe Wha.
Okay.
Cafe Wha, WHA question mark, and that was known as a basket house. Basket house means that the performers, they pass the hat around. So
okay, kind of like tips.
Yeah, they're working for tips.
Okay,
basically.
working for tips.
So
now we have PayPal and Venmo. Technology, techno tips.
Techno tips, same thing, right?
Okay.
So, but guess who was the main resident musician at the Cafe Wha?
Drum roll, please.
Jimmy. Well, he was then known as Jimmy James.
Okay,
but
Jimmy
it was
James.
James Marshall Hendrix.
Okay.
Was the resident blues player at Cafe Wha. And at some point, Johnny Hammond was getting a little, I don't know if it was bored. He wanted to do something else. So he decided to create this trio. And so he recruited Jimmy and this other guy, Randy Hansen, and another Randy. And they had a group called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames.
Oh, cool.
Right? I saw them at the Gaslight one time. And during that period, one day, and by the way, and Jimi Hendrix, he had the same roots that I had, unbeknownst to me. I have a picture in this chapter of my book of Jimmy with these records. And bear with me for a second. I'll show you something.
Okay.
Don't go away.
I'm not going anywhere. I'm glued to the screen, literally. What's the name of your book again? We need to hear the name of your book again, please.
I'll show you a bit of my record collection here.
Okay.
Okay. So that's Sonny Boy.
Yeah.
All right. And I'm looking for this one thing that me and Jimmy have in common. I'm sure it's here somewhere.
The name of your book again, Noe?
Hendrix Now.
Hendrix Now.
Exclamation point. Backstory of a legend. And for some reason I don't have it. So
okay.
Basically, the picture is Jimi Hendrix with 3 records under his arm, and one of them is Vanguard Records, Chicago, The Blues Today, Volume 1, 2, and 3. So this was my sort of Bible when I was this kid living in the Bronx, and I had this record, Chicago, The Blues Today, played it over and over and over again on my Victrola. And that's how I learned basically about harmonica. I played harmonica. I didn't know what the hell I was doing, but I just played along with it. That was the record that Jimmy had also. So we had that count, right? So I'm sitting on the stoop there in front of the Gaslight one day, and there's Jimmy. So we start talking, we talk about, oh, you like that Chicago, The Blues Today? And and you like this one, like that one, and we're talking about all these influences,
Yeah.
Robert Johnson and all this stuff. So that's how I met Jimmy for the first time. But my point is, then there's a weird connection between the English guys and the American guys, right? And this connection came together with Jimi Hendrix because Keith Richards' then girlfriend, Linda, she was hanging out in the village and she knew about Jimmy. So she went and she got Chaz Chandler, the bass player of the Animals. They had this song called "The House of the Rising Sun," big hit. I first heard that from Bob Dylan, and he heard it from Dave Van Ronk, this guy with the Hootenanny shows. Anyway, so Linda Keith, her name was actually Linda Keith, and she was Keith's girlfriend. But that's another one of those coincidences. Yeah. So Linda Keith arranges to have Jimmy James and the Blue Flames do a sort of a showcase at this place down the block on Bleecker Street called the Cafe A Go-Go. At the Cafe A Go-Go, which I was at many of these things, they had this thing called the Blues Bag. It was these concerts. You had like Mike Bloomfield, the Butterfield Blues Band. I saw Muddy there. I had some interchanges with Otis Spann, his piano player, whatnot. And the Blues Project was another band that was there. But she hooked up this thing where Jimmy James and the Blue Flames, that would be John Hammond and Jimmy and all these guys, would play a gig at the Blues Bag at the Cafe A Go-Go. And in the audience was Chaz Chandler from the Animals and a lot of other sort of rock and roll royalty, so to speak. And so they were there and they were checking out Jimmy and whatnot. And eventually, that is how Jimmy got to be Jimi Hendrix, because Chaz Chandler went over to him and said, "Okay, hear me out. This is what I want to do. I would like to take you over to England and create a group based around you. I'm thinking it should be a trio because you are so all over the place." And he truly was, as you well know. And we'll recruit a bass player and a drummer, and then we'll create this band called the Jimi Hendrix Experience. So that's what happened. So Jimmy goes through,
and history was made.
Right?
History was made. Yeah. What's your favorite Jimi Hendrix song?
My favorite Jimi Hendrix song is a song that I told you about when we were talking the other day.
Yeah.
And I have this video of it. It's the only recorded version of "Hear My Train A-Comin'," which Jimmy plays an acoustic guitar. Plays an acoustic, I think it was an acoustic 12-string guitar. And it's amazing. It's an amazing song. I love it. I love a lot of other ones too, but that one is
definitely special and unique because it's the only footage of him playing the acoustic guitar. So we're definitely, we're going to play that on the show.
Yeah. Good. And you'll find it's on the soundtrack of a movie called A Film About Jimi Hendrix. And the video shows a picture of him with the acoustic guitar and playing it and whatnot. And so that's pretty incredible. So so there's that.
Well, Noe, is there anything else you want to share before we go?
Oh, we're already over?
Yeah.
Oh man, I had so much. Let's see. Okay, I'll share one little thing.
Okay.
How I learned, or how I realized that I knew how to play harmonica.
Okay.
And this is related to Bob Dylan in a weird way, because in 1965, where his famous coming out party, so to speak, where Bob Dylan goes electric, that took place at the Newport Folk Festival, 1965, which I attended that, and so it was very well known that I explained to you before, they had the folk music movement kind of thing, and just like I came up in an Orthodox Jewish background, well, the folk music movement had its own kind of orthodoxy in a way. You had Pete Seeger, you had all these folkies who were dedicated to the acoustic guitar and the banjos and all this stuff. So Dylan comes out with an electric setup, right? Electric guitar. He had actually the members of his band, except for Paul Butterfield, were the members of the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. They were his backup. Okay, Mike Bloomfield, Elvin Bishop, Sam Lay, all these guys, and this guy named Al Cooper, who was from the Blues Project. Anyway, so it was a big controversial event which rocked the halls of rock history, and so he did that. But the next day, there was a harmonica workshop. It was led by a guy named Mel Lyman. Now, Mel Lyman was in a group.
I see where you're going with this, and this is really touching me.
Okay. Yeah. So Mel Lyman was with a group called the Jim Kweskin Jug Band. And they had some such hits as "The Blues My Naughty Sweetie Gave to Me," Maria Muldaur, if you ever heard of her.
Yeah.
Maria Muldaur was in that band, Jim Kweskin, and this guy Mel Lyman was on harmonica. Now, he was a controversial guy in himself, because later he became the leader of a cult in Boston that was like sort of like a Manson kind of thing. He was supposedly he was he said he was the god and all this stuff.
That's creepy.
Yeah, but he was creepy, but he was okay, believe me. And there was something to it, as I'm about to explain. He did have some powers, is what I'm saying. So Mel Lyman was giving this workshop in harmonica. Okay, he's teaching how to play a certain song. I think the song was "There's more pretty girls in one, more pretty girls in one. Every town I ramble around, there's more pretty girls in one." So he had, just so happens that he had this harmonica was a C harmonica, and he was playing a song, and just so happens that I had a C harmonica. So he's going like, that's a country blues lick, right?
Yeah.
And so I pulled out my harmonica and I started playing along. Until that point, I didn't know what the hell I was doing with this thing. I would drive people crazy on the city bus in the Bronx. I didn't know what was going on. But as soon as he started playing and I started playing along, it all came together, and I realized, hey, I know how to play harmonica. So that is how
you found your destiny. It clicked. The light bulb went on and said, "This is my calling." And now look at full circle. Full circle. Right. You're passing that baton on to young kids, and it's a beautiful thing. I wish everybody played an instrument. The world would be so much more a peaceful place. Imagine if everybody played an instrument.
That's right.
Sang. I wish people wouldn't hold back from singing. It's not about how you sound. It's about sharing what you feel inside and sharing your soul. Noe,
It's
you're the best. It is definitely therapy. You're the best. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing your stories. Thank you all for tuning in to this pretty amazing show. I think I'm honored to call you friend, Noe, and I'm glad that we connected at NAMM.
Right.
And so we'll see you all later. Thank you, and have a beautiful evening. Toodles.
I don't say goodbye. I say so long.
So long. Until we meet. So long. Bye.
Bye.